In the history of English literature, the 15th century is often called a barren age. However, it was far from stagnant. It was a volcanic age of English history, witnessing revolutionary changes in the political, social, and economic conditions of the time. Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we will talk about Age of Revival. This is the third video in the series of History of English Literature. In the previous video, we discussed about the age of Chaucer. If you haven't watched that video, you can watch it by clicking the link in the description below. The century began with the nationalistic fervor of Henry V, who led England to a glorious victory at the Battle of Agincourt in 1415. But his early death left a 9-month-old baby, Henry VI, on the throne. In a 100 Years' War, a French peasant girl, Joan of Arc, who believed she was acting under divine guidance, led the French army to a momentous victory at Orleans in 1429. Her leadership repulsed the English attempt to conquer France during the 100 Years' War. This loss abroad triggered a terrible civil war at home between the Lancastrians and Yorkists. Eventually, Henry VII won, founding the Tudor Dynasty and establishing a strong national monarchy. While the clergy were powerful and wealthy, the institution faced corruption. Much of this wealth was spent building colleges at Oxford and Cambridge. However, the universities remained shackled to the decaying scholasticism of the Middle Ages, which stopped the growth of creative thought and literature. Despite the wars, the common people were making great progress. Agriculture and sheep farming became highly profitable. The pastoral letters show us a society engaged in active businesses and negotiations. We see a shift toward Gothic architecture. Old Anglo-Saxon castles were replaced by brick buildings with well-lit rooms reflecting a new era of prosperity. The most significant event of the age occurred in 1477. William Caxton established his printing house in London. This heralded a new epoch, making it possible to print books easily, spread the love of reading, and standardize the works of old scholars. To understand the poetry of this era, we have to look at the three major tendencies that defined it. The imitative spirit. Almost every poet tried to imitate Chaucer. They worshipped Chaucer but struggled to imitate his genius, leading to a century of imitation rather than innovation. Decadence in versification. This is the era of doggerel. Chaucer's precise musical meter was lost. In its place, we find loose, sprawling, and unmusical verse that lacked rhythmic harmony. The rise of satire and morality. As the century progressed, poetry became a weapon. It shifted from pure storytelling to moral instruction and sharp attacks on the church and law courts. There are four main forms dominated the landscape during 15th century. The allegory. This was the most popular and persistent form. It used personification, characters representing virtues, vices, or reason. Stephen Hawes wrote The Pastime of Pleasure, and William Dunbar wrote The Golden Turk, which is an example of allegory. Satirical poetry. It is a reaction to the dirty conditions of the times. Poets used verse to mock the clergy and social corruption. John Skeleton, known for his Caltonics, he wrote Colin Cloud to satirize the clergy. Alexander Berkeley wrote Sheep of Fools, a collection of moral discussions on the vices of various professions. Eclogue and pastoral poetry. Introduced to England by Alexander Berkeley and Robert Henryson. These were moral satires disguised as stories about country life and nature. Ballads and lyrics. While formal poetry struggled, the folk tradition was at its peak. This was the golden age of Robin Hood cycle and famous Nut Brown Maid. The English Chaucerians. This group included Thomas Hawcliffe, John Lydgate, Stephen Hawes, and John Skelton. The Scottish Chaucerians. Unlike their English counterparts, the Scottish Chaucerians, James I, Robert Henryson, William Dunbar, and Gavin Douglas are credited with the truly capturing the spirit of Chaucer while adding their own national fervor. King James I wrote King's Squire, It is a dream allegory in Ram Royal stanza and it is inspired by King Knight's Tale. Robert Henryson wrote The Moral Fables of Aesop, The Testament of Cresside. William Dunbar wrote The Golden Tower, Thistle and the Rose, and Two Married Women and the Widow. Gavin Douglas wrote The Palace of Honor, King Hart and Aeneid. The Revolution of English Prose. Unlike the poetry of the 15th century, which saw a decline after Chaucer, prose made significant leeway. During this era, English prose moved away from being a rough material of the native tongue and began to take shape as a sophisticated literary form suitable for instruction, entertainment, and philosophy. Major figures in 15th century prose. Reginald Peacock, known for the repressor of overmuch blaming of the clergy. Sir John Fortescue wrote on the governance of England. Sir Thomas More, famous for Utopia and his English work, The History of Richard III. Sir Thomas Malory, known for La Morte d'Arthur, and arguably the first great prose stylist. The Paston Letters. These letters provide a unique insight into the domestic life of the time. They cover everything from riots and execution to cooking and illness. Development of English drama. To understand the greatness of Shakespeare and Marlowe, we must first look at the humble and perhaps surprising beginning of English drama. It began in the Middle Ages with simple pantomimes during church services. To help humble worshippers understand the lessons of the Bible, priests began to act out key moments. For example, during Easter, the burial and resurrection of the cross were dramatized. Gradually, these brief rituals grew into more elaborate ceremonies, miracle and mystery plays. As this play grew in popularity, they moved from the altar to the town square. Miracle plays focused on the lives of saints. Mystery plays told stories from the Old Testament and New Testaments. By the 1300s, control shifted from the clergy to the trade guilds. These guilds took great pride in their productions, performing on pageants, large movable platforms drawn by horses from station to station. Every major town like York, Chester, and Wakefield had its own cycle of plays, spanning from the creation of the world to the final judgment. The morality plays. As we moved into the later Middle Ages, drama took a step forward with morality plays. Unlike the Bible-based mysteries, these were allegorical. Characters were not historical figures but personified virtues and vices like beauty, strength, love, and peace. The most famous of this is Everyman, where the protagonist is summoned by death and must find a companion to accompany him to the grave. These plays were significant because they taught a lesson about right living and allowed for more original plots and creative imagination. The Interludes. In the 16th century, we see the rise of the interlude. These were short, often funny plays performed at feasts for the nobility. They were a massive turning point because they introduced real characters, citizens, friars, and peddlers. The artistic period. The rise of regular drama. Finally, during the Renaissance, the artistic period began, influenced by Latin literature. We saw the birth of the first regular English plays. The first regular English comedy was Ralph Roister, written in 1541 and written by Nicholas Udall. The first regular English tragedy was Gorboduc, written in 1562 by Sackville and Norton. It was written in blank verse and followed a stately classical form. So this is the end of this video, the Age of Revival. The Age of Revival is the era of new learning. It is the moment when England woke up to the wisdom of Greeks and Romans, using the printing press to spread these ancient ideas and lay the foundation for the brilliance of the Elizabethan age. I hope I could bring some facts about the age and made easy for you to understand. If you find this video informative, then don't forget to like, share and subscribe the channel.